Join us as we dive into the history, hauntings, and high strangeness of the world to try to better understand the paranormal. I will be your guide. I am paranormal researcher and investigator Eric Freeman Sims. Welcome to the Unseen Paranormal Podcast. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Unseen Paranormal. I'm your host Eric as usual. Thank y'all for tuning in. Thanks for listening to the show. Thanks for engaging online. It's always fun to see the comments and stuff on Facebook and in the Unseen Paranormal Lounge and to chat with y'all and all that good stuff. Big news. So for anybody that doesn't know, we bought a 200-year-old haunted house in Hopkinsville, Kentucky called the Night House. And we are now taking reservations for investigations. The investigations are starting in the middle of August and running, of course, through the spooky season, September and October, and on into November, December. And we got 4 nights a month. We're doing every other Friday and Saturday night. And there's 2 price points. For 7 till 3 a.m. is $500 with a $150 deposit to save that date. So you don't have to pay it all up front. And then you can just pay the remainder. You have to pay it 7 days before your actual date. So you don't have to pay all the money up front. And that's for up to 8 people. And also for up to 8 people, we have a full night from 7 p.m. until 9 a.m. the next day, where you actually sleep in the house. And we have full showers and stuff to take a shower. And that's for up to 8 people as well. And that's a $150 deposit as well to book the date. And you can go on the website now, thenightHouseKY.com, and night is spelled K-N-I-G-H-T. And go book your team or gather some friends and family together and come see us. Book a night at the Night House and come have some fun. But excited about that new business venture, and it's going pretty well so far. So I've been working on it a lot. Also, you can go to the NightHouseKY.com and check out the renovations we're doing. I've got to put a lot more pictures up there, but you can check out what we're doing with the house. It's not all about the paranormal. We want to do lots of other things eventually, like weddings and all kinds of other stuff. So, and a lot to do with the history. Our biggest focus is on the 200-year history of this house and the families that live there and telling their stories. Me as an investigator, I like to investigate new places. And so this is a new location to do that. But the paranormal, the money from that helps us, maintain and to work on the house, to restore some things and fix some things and keep the house up. It's a lot of maintenance on a 200-year-old house. So appreciate everybody that's going to come out and investigate. I've got some cool events coming up later on this year. I'll be announcing for September, October, spooky season as well. So stay tuned for those. But that's all of the business. Let's get to today's episode. Today we are talking to Justin H. Guess. He is a spiritualist and a pagan, and he is also a paranormal author. And his forte is the Appalachian legends and folklore and myths and all the weirdness and high strangeness going on in Appalachia. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. We'll see you next time. Hey, Justin, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I can't believe I hadn't come across your books before. You're kind of been a prolific author the past quite a few years, and especially my own home state of Tennessee, and writing a lot about urban legends and folklore in especially the Appalachian Mountains. And so I definitely want to have you on when I found your book.
Well, I'm glad someone outside of this little area found them.
Yeah, and I think they're great. I love how you put them together and explain things. One of my favorite things before we even get started diving into the books is that you actually explain that skinwalkers aren't from here and that wendigos aren't from here. They have nothing to do with Appalachia.
Oh, they really don't, but they're new urban legends for the internet. So I was like, let's include those too, since everyone's talking about them.
Yeah, my audience knows I've been fighting against that. Like, there is no, that's a Navajo. That is not, that's out in the desert, Utah. Like, no, not here. It has nothing to do with the Cherokee or the Shawnee. Not a bit. Yeah, none of the tribes that were here. And so, but yeah, I appreciate that.
Well, I mean, technically we did have Skinwalker in Cherokee, but they weren't called that. They were called Skeely. They were the Owls. So
yeah, but it was also a different legend of how you became one of those too.
Oh yeah,
as opposed to like, I think the Navajo, you have to eat like one of your relatives, like cannibalism, kill them and eat them, and like this whole black magic ritual thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how did you get interested in writing about the Appalachian folklore and cryptids and all these monsters and things?
I co-founded a paranormal investigation team 20 years ago, maybe 25, and I kept noticing these patterns to stories, especially the ladies in white. I always saw them like
Yeah.
they were around water, they were around wells, and also bridges. I saw a lot of motifs that kept repeating themselves, and I was like, let me look into this and see really what's going on.
Yeah, that seems to be a pervasive kind of all around the world. Ladies in white,
Mhm.
they're always longing for their lost love.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, yeah. There's plenty of those stories in Middle Tennessee, and I've dove into the research for all these different ghost stories and lived all over Tennessee. But
Mhm.
yeah, you also grew up in Appalachia, right?
Oh, yes. I'm from Northeast Tennessee, born and raised.
Yeah, so kind of steeped in that culture, and that's a big thing. I love it because they have like the storyteller competition out there every year.
They do. That is 30 minutes from me in Jonesboro.
Yeah, and I love how they keep the old tradition alive of the folklore and the storytelling, and whether any of these stories are true or not is not the point.
I agree.
Yeah, why do you think it's so important to keep the urban legends and the folklore going?
I'm going to speak to ghost folklore, first. It's very important, even if it's not true. Okay, even if it's just
Yeah,
based in fantasy. It is containing information. It brings you back in history, reminds you of people that have long since passed. And if there wasn't a ghost story attached to it, then that story would die. No one would know about it. So it's kind of like a time capsule.
yeah, and I know a lot of these folklores and things, parents told their kids to teach them lessons and
Yes.
things too, but to also keep them in line. Like if you don't behave, the wood boogers are gonna come get you.
Or
Yeah,
old
so
rawhide and bloody bones. They would all, yeah. Mhm.
yeah. So you've written many books now, and you've had quite a few come out this
Yes.
year. A couple of the newest ones we'll go through, and I just want to touch on some of the ones that I haven't heard outside of Tennessee that I think people maybe aren't as familiar with that I find interesting. The Ghost Fiddler of Rattlesnake Rock, I find interesting legend.
Yes. That one keeps showing up, especially around the very, very mountainous regions.
In that story, it's a guy who kept the snakes at bay, kind of by fiddling
Yeah.
and being a master on the
Kind of
fiddle.
like a Pied Piper situation.
Yeah, yeah, and so it kind of jumps around to different places though, as far as where it actually the Rattlesnake Rock is.
It does. Any outcropping on top of a mountain that rattlesnakes would bathe in, rattlesnake rock. So it seems to pop up again and again if you're in Georgia, Kentucky, Tennessee.
Yeah, it seems like one of those that because a lot of these, like we're talking about, the ladies in white are kind of pervasive urban legends and folklore kind of around the world and different
Mhm.
places around the country. But that's one that I've never heard of. Like I said, outside of Tennessee and
Oh,
Appalachia,
okay.
it's just not one of those that caught on. I mean, you have others too, not just lady in white, but like the kids that'll push your car across the railroad tracks if it stalls on the road tracks.
Yes, I love a gravity hill. There's one
Yeah,
close to me, and it's cute for small kids to say, "Oh, it's going to happen." Yeah. What?
yeah, yeah. Yeah, we have a gravity hill in Nashville that I've actually they don't let you take cars on it anymore, but you can. It's in a park, in
Hmm.
a city park, so you can actually take balls and anything that'll roll out there, and yeah, it actually looks like it rolls uphill.
Oh.
And yeah, they actually brought in one time, I think back in the '90s when I was growing up, they brought in some scientists, and they actually dug the hill up to see if it had any any weird properties or anything like that, and then they just decided, well, it's just optical illusion.
Yeah, I would have just got a level, just to check.
Yeah.
That's just me.
Yeah, for some reason they dug it up to, I guess, to see if there's like magnetic rock or something weird.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Another weird one that is kind of unique is the knot deer.
Yes, that one is unique. And I've seen it become very popular on TikTok for some reason. I think I tracked it back literally to the person who created that story. I think it was a personal story and it just took off. Any deer that acts a little strange, and if you're from the mountains, there are deer. Yeah, they're everywhere. So any
Yeah,
deer that's strange is suddenly a not deer, which is kind of a skinwalker in the urban legends now.
yeah. Some of them walk on their hind legs, and have extra legs, or just all kind of matter of weird things.
Or fangs. Yeah.
But there's also, I mean, there are definite like scientific reasons with the chronic wasting disease and things like that are going around.
Yes, they are. And I definitely say if you see a deer acting like that, maybe back away from it. Don't try to get too close because it's probably encephalopathy of some kind or prion disease.
Yeah, which is like a mad cow.
Hmm.
Yeah. Another big thing in Appalachia is the witch culture.
Yes.
Yeah. Why do you think that's so pervasive? Do you think that comes along with like the ancestry?
I am not. It is very peculiar because those witchcraft stories I've really, really had to dig for and rely a lot on historians, a lot on censuses because there wasn't much information out there. It's very different here because they had a lot of charm doctors. The people that would heal burns, take witchcraft off of you, would all kinds of healing stuff too. But they weren't prosecuted and treated like they were in Salem, even though there really wasn't that much time difference between them.
Yeah, I've got a buddy, Steve Stockton, who's from out that way, who writes a lot about Appalachia and grown up in that area
Hmm.
out in Oak Ridge and Knoxville. And his grandmother was what he called a water witch.
Hmm.
And she used to teach him all kinds of things. And he was the veiled one when he was born. So he was born with a veil.
Gotcha.
And she kind of, he was the one that she passed on like her stories and things to.
Yes. So he really shouldn't be telling you about that stuff.
Right. Well, he said that he was afraid of her. Like she scared him to death because she's like this old Cherokee lady with these long bony fingers and things,
Uh-huh.
And yeah, so he was like, yeah, she was just scary. So he's like, I should have been listening more, but I really wasn't.
Right.
Because she just scared the shit out of me. So there's all kind of cryptids associated with I know Tennessee in general.
Yes.
You have things like giant catfish, and you have the wampus cat and the red cheetah.
Yeah. The Wampus Cat was the most interesting because I traced it back to, I mean, unless the newspaper was doing a joke, and sometimes they did write jokes, but the newspaper articles didn't seem to be a joke. There was some strange cat that was walking around on its hind legs in that story, and it had a picture for jelly beans. They had to close down the store. They didn't want kids on the street after. It was interesting. Found one, oh, I want to say Illinois, and it was a chimera kind of creature. It had pig feet, but it had feline features, feline tails. So that one was more interesting.
Yeah, the wampus cat I find interesting. The two legends that there's two different ones I've always heard. One was there was a witch who used to shapeshift
Mm-hmm.
into the cat, into like a big cat, and then one time the villagers went out looking for her, and they caught her mid change, and so since she was mid change, she was stuck with like four legs and part cat, and so that was one of the folklore that I heard, and then the other was just that it's a cryptid.
Yeah.
But I found that one interesting because it I think there's like 30 something schools that use the wampus cat as their mascot.
Yes, there are. I love them. I love their statues.
Yeah.
The story that keeps getting passed around here was that it was a Cherokee woman who it was because all the animals didn't come all at once in the Cherokee folklore. Mountain lion became mountain lion because a woman's husband had gone insane from a creature, a demon in the woods. I think it's called Iwahe. And she put on this fur coat and went out and found it in a cave. And when she screamed at it, it fled and left the town. So no other men went mad. So she decided, I have to stay a cat and scream every time this creature's near. Otherwise, men will go insane.
Wow. Yeah. Just the derivation of some of these is interesting. Like, just with them being to me, like that one would be an explanation for people having mental health issues,
Well, according to the Cherokee, medicine men, it would be fish in your brain, the spirit of fish in your brain that caused madness. So there's that.
Yeah. But yeah, the Wampus cat gets just gotten pervasive throughout the Southern culture. Like I said, 30-something
Yes.
schools have it as a mascot, from colleges to high schools to, all these different teams. And just found it interesting. The giant catfish is another one that we hear in Middle Tennessee. That's kind of, I've seen pervasive all over Tennessee, especially with all the TVA dams and things.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually spoke to someone with the TVA and said, he said it was a myth, but he had heard it, so he couldn't say it wasn't completely inaccurate. But
Yeah.
I've never seen one that big.
Well, I saw somebody, an article that I saw about them. It might have been in the Tennessean or something, but they'd read an article about the folklore around here, and they said, fishermen are known to exaggerate their catches, so maybe that's part of why you have the giant catfish myths the size of Volkswagen Beetles.
Probably.
Yeah. And then, of course, one of the interesting things I think that kind of goes into Bigfoot as well, and definitely the Appalachians are definitely a hot spot for Bigfoot. I know some guys that research out there Bigfoot hotspots and have had interactions things, but feral people
yes,
or wild men.
Wild men. That was an interesting little trip back in time, all the way back to the European wild people that would get lost in the woods and be raised by wolves. That one's very interesting, and they've changed now. It is the feral people that live in national parks and are responsible for the disappearances of people in the missing 411. So I find that very interesting.
Yeah. I've never heard that connected to the 411 with David Paulides stuff, but there's lots of different explanations that people come up with for the missing 411 stuff. David Paulides now has come out and seemed to say that he thinks it's more Bigfoot, alien type stuff. So.
Oh, okay. Well,
yeah.
Bigfoot was the interesting one as well, but all of them are interesting, I think. The first accounts I get from the Sasquatch is what their name came from, the Sasquatch. One of the people that went on record with the newspaper at the time said that he had traveled with one, following one for, I think, half a day on an underground path. I found that very interesting, that they lived in caves is what that culture said.
Yeah, and I know the Cherokee somewhat believed that Bigfoot was walked in both worlds, so they had a foot in this world and a foot into a different dimension.
Yes,
and so and then nowadays you got people, on both sides fighting about. You got this half of the Bigfoot camp that thinks it's all supernatural, and then you got the other camp that thinks it's a undiscovered ape species, so they call the other people woo and all this other stuff. So I don't know what to believe. I just tell my audience that's these are reasons why I don't camp.
Yes, that's a very good reason.
Yeah, not just Bigfoot, but lots of other. I mean, just real things that we know exist. Bears and mountain lions and things like that. That little thin tent's not going to protect you from shit.
Well, the wildlife has gone back and forth about the mountain lion, saying it's not here and it is. And I personally have heard a woman screaming in the woods, which is mountain lion. So I'm going to say they're here.
Yeah, I know there's plenty of hunters have gotten them on their trail cams.
Exactly.
And for whatever reason, the TWRA just will not say that they're back in Tennessee.
Yeah, they're not here. Nope.
Well, and it's funny because last summer in downtown Nashville, in the part of Nashville called Antioch, there were 2 separate black bears filmed in town.
Okay.
So if you have black bears moving back into Middle Tennessee, why would it be so crazy to think that we have mountain lions, moving back into Appalachia? So, and Middle Tennessee and all over.
Right.
Especially when they're getting run out of other habitat up north, and even like the even down in Florida, you have the Florida panther that's getting run out of its habitat. So, maybe they're moving north where they actually have habitat and food.
Where I live, it's if you see a bear, it's like, okay, well, it's a bear. So, not a big deal, but I could understand in Nashville, yes.
Yeah, it was weird to see black bears downtown Nashville. It made the news, and they showed the videos on the news and stuff. So the TWRA couldn't deny that. It's not like people have pets, pet bears that they release. It's not like seeing a python or something in the wild,
Right.
But yeah, also over in there's a big fight over in England and over in the UK. I've talked to a couple of authors from over there about big cats being over there and being sighted, and the government over there won't.
Oh yes,
say,
the Beast of Exmoor and the Phantom Black Cats. Yes.
Yeah, and plenty of people have seen them. There was a video that I saw not too long ago that it was definitely a black cat that was bigger than a house cat in a field. And
Yes.
One of the guys I talked to, he said that he said the government's not ever going to say that we have these big cats, even if they do have proof, because the farmers will be too afraid with all their livestock and stuff. And
Exactly.
But yeah, there's some good evidence out there for our area and for over in England for having big cats.
Yes.
But it's weird. It would be weird for England and the UK with them being an island, to have big cats.
Well, they can do the old thing that we used to do in this area is, there was a traveling circus that came through, the train derailed, and they got loose.
Yeah. That's a close to me where I live outside of Nashville. There's a little town called White Bluff, and you may have heard this legend, but the White Bluff Screamer.
Yes, I have.
And that is the folklore there, that it was a circus train that got derailed.
Oh, okay.
and all these animals got loose, and that's one half of the legend. The other half of the legend that it's a banshee.
Yeah, from what I read, it sounded more like a banshee because it was predicting a death was about to happen.
Yeah. My actually I have family that live on the road that the banshee's supposed to follow you. Mm-hmm. And I've got a couple of cousins who actually think that they've seen it. And then I was talking to Ken Gerhardt, the famous cryptozoologist.
Yes.
And in one of his books, he had the White Bluff Screamer, but the report that he took from the lady was that she was at a swimming hole near White Bluff, and she saw a white Bigfoot.
I have also heard white Bigfoot for that one, yes.
Yeah. So I have looked at newspaper articles, and I could never find where a circus train crashed.
No, there never is, really.
Well, at least in this area, there really are railroad tracks that run through there.
Right.
I can imagine some places there's not even railroad tracks in sight, and they still have the story of a train crashing.
They do, yes.
Yeah. But yeah, I find it interesting that it's kind of melded into three different things. It's kind of weird.
But it keeps the story alive, and that's what's important.
Yeah, and there's another local legend around there too, called Werewolf Springs, and it's actually in a state park called Montgomery Bell State Park, and that's actually where they filmed Ernest Goes to Camp.
I love that movie.
Yeah, and they do Ernest Days every year, so the surviving cast members go in the summer there for a weekend. And yeah, you can go see the cabins and see the lake and everywhere they filmed. But there's a place called Hall Springs, the park, and that was the first area there that was settled by a family, and the Hall family was a real family. And there's this huge spring that comes out of the ground there. But the local legend is that the family's being tortured by these screams in the woods, and so nobody's getting any sleep. Well, the father finally got tired of it, and he took his hunting dog out one night and followed the screams. Well, the screams led him in a big giant circle, and when the sun was coming up, he found himself back at his cabin. When he went in the cabin, his family had been torn to shreds by some beast.
Yeah.
And then there was another attack that happened not long after that. It was a farmer and his farmhand were in the wagon coming back from town, and something was stalking them in the woods, and they kind of hurried up the horses a little bit. What ended up attacking them, the farmhand hid in the woods until the next morning, but it killed the farmer and the horse. And he went into town. They had a whole posse that went out in the woods looking, I imagine, pitchforks and torches and guns, dogs and stuff just going out through the woods.
Yep.
Looking for this beast, but they never found it. But yeah, that's the legend of Werewolf Springs. And so now instead of Hall Springs, they call it Werewolf Springs because the farmhand described it as a giant dog standing on its hind legs.
Oh, okay.
And so that's an interesting. That's the only big cryptid legend I know around here. There's a cryptid legend up in northern Middle Tennessee in the Gallatin area of a pterodactyl, a flying dinosaur.
I will reserve not to comment on the pterodactyl.
But speaking of flying cryptids, one of the more famous ones I think that people know is the Thunderbirds.
Yes, which is not from any culture in my area. That's northern culture. But I guess it's just a catch-all term for giant bird.
Yeah. Is there any of that stuff, any giant bird stories in the Appalachia, Southern Appalachians?
There's always giant bird stories, almost in every single county, and they're usually described as hawk-like.
Yeah.
So I think Monster Quest did a very good one on a boy in Georgia who almost got snatched up by a very large bird.
Yeah.
His mother actually witnessed it too. So, yeah.
Yeah, I've seen that story. Yeah, that's pretty interesting. And she was a pretty credible witness too.
She was.
And then there's the other famous one where they got the video when they were canoeing.
Yes. But,
yeah,
it's hard. For me, it's hard to tell distance. I'm like, okay, well, how far away is it? I am a skeptical believer. In fact, I wrote a book called Ghost Hunting for Skeptical Believers.
Yeah.
The stories are more important to me.
Yeah, and it's funny that you call yourself that because I've always called myself that because even in doing paranormal investigations, I will throw stuff out before I ever put it out as evidence.
Yes.
And I think that's how you need to be. And then especially even more so with cryptids and things, because so many people can have, I'm not saying they're all misidentification with cryptids, but I think a lot of it is.
I would say a lot of it is.
Yeah.
But then again, it does fuel the stories, which I'm happy about.
Right. Another thing that interests me too in Appalachia, and I think this can probably be directly tied to the Irish coming over, but the whole Fey folk.
Yes.
Lots of that throughout. I know even in like the Smoky Mountain National Park, I've heard stories. And
the most recent one I've heard is from Roan Mountain, Tennessee. A woman said that she was, pouring her mother's ashes out, and she claimed that she was attacked by small-winged people. So that's the most recent one I've heard.
Yeah, that's interesting. There's a tree, big giant tree that I think is near Cades Cove that people talk about being a fairy tree. And when they get around it, they feel weird. And people have had almost like hallucination, like the air gets like shimmery,
Okay.
and things like that, like they're being influenced by the Fae.
Now, so that is very that would catch my interest if someone had told me that the air became kind of shimmery. I've heard that from 2 other people, so that is very interesting to me.
Yeah, I talked to who's become a friend of mine. Her name's Gemma Jade, and she's written a book about the Fae and how it kind of encompasses a lot of the different phenomena, including Bigfoot and other cryptids and even ghosts with different types of Fae. And I didn't even know it went that kind of deep as far as there's different types, and some of them like humans, some don't. Some are helpful, some will kill humans.
Like the red hat goblin, it kills people and then dyes its hat in the human blood, and that's why it has a red hat. Yeah.
I've never heard that before.
Oh yeah, that's another fairy.
And then one of the big things I'd never heard until recently, a few years ago, was the Dogman stories in Tennessee in general.
Yeah. I'm not sure what to make of the Dogman, actually. I hear a lot about it.
Yeah. Yeah, and it became popular with Linda Godfrey and the Beast of Bray Road.
It did.
And then I guess more and more people have just come out and said and talked about their experiences with it.
Yes, I have. I helped a gentleman with his YouTube channel. He and his wife were witnesses to a dog man. So until that point, I was kind of dismissive. I was like, okay, this is a werewolf, but not. But listening to them, I was like, okay, well, something is a little off, and I sometimes wonder if something has kind of been created mentally and moved over to the other side and has kind of bled into this side occasionally.
Yeah, that's one of the things I've kind of dove into, the thought form or the golem. kind of whatever you want to call it, of a lot of these newer cryptids and newer phenomena that are coming around, like they call them the lumberjack.
Hmm.
It's just these lumberjack type men that are always dressed like a lumberjack in jeans and a plaid shirt and boots, but they're always helpful. People getting lost in the woods, things like that.
Interesting. That sounds more like Fey activity. Oh, well, helpful. Maybe not Fey.
Yeah, yeah. But that's one of the things I'm like, could that be a thought form? And then even like Slender Man just being more prevalent from people actually claiming to see Slender Man, and then you had the two little girls that tried to kill their friend because Slender Man told them to, and
Yeah.
yeah.
I've even heard of Slender Man, but again, I take that one with a grain of salt. I've heard of someone seeing Slender Man in the woods, but I don't know.
Yeah. Have you ever heard about any of the phenomena of the predator type creature, the Shimmer Man?
The shimmering, yes, I've heard that one as well. I'm not sure what to do with that one, because that one's kind of a newer one.
Yeah.
Can't really pin down anywhere it's came from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know there's some, I know David Paulides had some, one of his documentaries had some people, some hunters who actually experienced it and told their story, and they sounded pretty credible, but there's lots more stories of those coming out. And I know some people have actually seen it firsthand. Steve Stockton being one of them that I was talking about. And then Jim and Jade also has seen that phenomena of what looks like a creature cloaking itself like that and kind of stalking them. For Steve Stockton, I think it was in Portland, Oregon, but downtown, he was out late night waiting on the train or something. And he finally got away from it. He was by himself at this train station, and he ended up like kind of booking it to another train station where there's actually people.
Right.
It kind of left him alone, but it kind of stalked him the whole way.
But see, to me also, I would go up, and I'm not one of those people that sticks to one camp. I do like to go into the paranormal, ghost hunting, cryptozoology, and ufology. So the shimmering, I would wonder, is that ufology?
Yeah, yeah. Some kind of cloaking technique for them, and it's weird. If that is true, ever proves to be true, then the guy who wrote the Predator movies, what did he know?
Exactly.
To kind of get it perfectly right. But there's so much with Appalachian, from southern Appalachia all the way up through northern Appalachia. You have spook lights and all these different things.
Yes. I love spook lights. I keep going back and forth between maybe it's a natural occurring phenomenon, but then again, there are no earthquakes, but they do seem to occur a lot on fault lines. So I'm wondering if any tectonic strain is causing that. I don't know.
Yeah, that's interesting. And then some people claim like ball lightning, things like that as well.
Yeah.
Which is not really widely understood, but has been proven by science that it's a real thing. For the longest time that it couldn't even prove that. But one of the other things I find fascinating is that there are so many accounts of ghost stories in like old newspapers. And it was kind of, some of the ones I've read, it was kind of just matter of fact. At like Mr. Johnson's place, he saw a specter last night at the foot of his bed, and that was it.
Yes, I love those. And I'm like, but where is this? Because I would like to go and take pictures of this area, but no, they don't tell me where.
Yeah, and that was just the news of the day, and it was just like it was just he reported it to the news, or the police, or whatever, and it was just kind of it just happened, But there's so many of those that are really interesting. That I found an article about the Tennessee wild man from the 1840s that was warning men to keep your wives and your kids and your dogs in, because the Tennessee wild man will come snatch them off the street.
That was very common. I saw that a lot with the wild men, especially the one in Western North Carolina, and it was a caveman type looking person who would go in and steal wives. And so keep your wives close. That's very interesting. And Bigfoot also has a reputation, according to story, of being more interested in the females.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that goes, the Bigfoot stuff goes into like I think some of these phenomena cross over, like the crybaby bridges.
Yes. Yes.
One of the phenomena with Bigfoot is hearing a baby cry to maybe lure
Yes.
women.
Yes, I first learned about that on a show on YouTube called Hellier about the
Yeah.
crybaby. That's the first time I heard that, and I was like, now I need to research this.
Some of the locations too with the ghosts and hauntings I find interesting. How there's so much folklore around them. Rotherwood Mansion is one of them.
Rotherwood Mansion. Oh my, yes.
And that place, it's a beautiful place. It's still standing.
It is. So the one you're seeing is not the original. That one burnt down.
Yeah, okay.
That's a fairly, well, not new, but it was built after. And the man that Joseph, the man that they all say was the horrible slave master, it was
Yeah.
actually the next man who owned it. And Rowena is a beautiful woman in white until I got her picture from Hawkins County Historian, and I was like, no, that is definitely not Rowena. And also, she died in, I think, Louisiana. So,
Yeah.
but again, the story, it's important, it's interesting. Kids are going to tell it,
Yeah.
and they're going to remember these people.
Yeah, and Rowena, with being the woman in white, supposedly her fiance drowned.
Yes.
And she ended up supposedly killed herself by drowning herself.
First one drowned, the second one died of yellow fever. That's when she drowned herself.
Yeah.
Her father did keep a detailed diary, and she did commit suicide when she was in Louisiana, but he didn't mention how.
Yeah. And there's lots of those stories. Was it Rotherwood Mansion that the horrible slave owner ended up dying because he gagged on flies or something?
Joshua Phipps, yes, died by gagging, and then when he was buried, a black hound with glowing red eyes popped out.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Some of these stories are crazy. And just the fact of going and finding whether it's true or not. But like you said, the stories are still important, whether they're true or not. And I think even some of the stories that we tell nowadays that, may have happened to us and multiple other people will become folklore one day.
Yes, they will. And I think the mode of getting that now is mostly through TikTok, actually. So it's kind of important when something new pops up for me to go, well, let me look at this.
Yeah. And I hate all the fake videos.
I do too.
But somewhere in there you will find some that are true.
Yes.
That are real, maybe real video of things that are going on, things like that, and amongst all the fake stuff.
Yes.
But it's hard to because there's so much technology with AI now and all that stuff. It's so hard to tell what's real and what's not. I've seen crazy shit in the 25 years I've been investigating with my own eyes.
Yeah.
That, people, you can believe or not, but I saw it and it happened.
No, I got you. I investigated a place and captured a chair moving, and the comments became its invisible string. So, yes, I understand.
Yeah. I'm surprised. We've actually, since I bought that 200-year-old house, the Night House in Hopkinsville, I've actually caught some things on video. And the comments have actually been not too bad.
Well, good.
I get maybe because my reputation is good as an investigator and that I don't, do bullshit. But there's one that it's a white mist in the middle of the day that goes across the camera and there's nobody there. Yeah. And the biggest thing that I got from somebody was, it's a humidifier. And I'm like, it's the middle of summer. It's 80% humidity out. Why the hell do we need a humidifier in the house? Puffing out, why? What, we want to walk into a sauna? So make any sense. And then I got some noises on a camera, and it's behind the camera, but it's very up close. But it sounds like furniture moving. Sounds like someone walking around, and it's really loud. And I set up the cameras to when we're not there for motion and for sound, to notify me. And this was at like 12:30 at night. We weren't there. Nobody was in the house, and somebody commented something about, well, could the camera be picking up radio signals? I'm like, what? Do you hear voices? It's if you're hearing voices, then you have mental health issues, because it actually sounds like furniture moving, and this camera's on a mantle
Right.
of the fireplace. There's nothing behind it to be moving,
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, some of the stuff that people come up with is just really funny. And kind of seeing a change in the paranormal world, though, in the past few years, of people actually would be willing to debunk other people.
I have seen it change from, I think MTV had a show called Fear, I want to say,
Yeah.
and then we went to Ghost Hunters. I have seen it change from it being investigations, seemed more like party favor, entertainment for the people who wanted the investigations, to it not being so prevalent now, and people are more harsh on some of the claims, which I do blame some of the shows for
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I do too. Online, I think it's changed from people actually trying to educate people a little bit, instead of just offhandedly saying, "Well, that's not the paranormal." I've actually seen people say, "Well, that's a lens flare," or it could be this or that, and trying to educate people. Not as there are still many harsh people out there, because you're always going to have trolls.
Oh yeah, oh yeah,
yeah. And what a lot of people don't know too about that show, MTV's Fear, was that Jason Hawes was a location scout for them and a consultant. And that's how he ended up with his own TV show with Ghost Hunters.
Oh, well, that was the show that got me interested in ghost hunting.
Yeah, I watched that show as well, knowing that it was probably full of shit.
Oh yeah.
Just made up to scare. And most of the stuff that happened, the producers, piped in sounds and things like that to scare them. But I don't think I don't remember them ever like billing it as real ghost activity.
No, I don't think they ever did. It was more, hey, there's a camera facing your actors. Let's get their responses.
Yeah. And I think I think whether you believe in them or not, the ghost shows, I think they've done a good job at continuing the stories of the history of a lot of these places that would have been forgotten.
Certainly have. And certain cases, such as a certain hospital in Kentucky, it's quite lucrative business.
Yeah. Well, I'm hoping my house is lucrative business, but not just for the hauntings.
Right.
We have plans to do other things like a wedding venue and all that stuff.
Oh, all right.
But we bought the house to keep the history alive, and nobody's ever really dove into the history of this house.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it's the oldest house in Hopkinsville in Christian County, Kentucky, built between 1850 and 1820. And but that's why that's my motivation for owning this location. The paranormal will just help pay the bills and help to renovate the place.
Definitely.
But we've experienced so much stuff in there already that I think they want to tell their story too.
Right.
And they're very mellow and very nice. They haven't scared anybody. They don't make you feel uncomfortable.
Good.
Nothing like that. I actually saw, for the first time, I saw the lady of the house out of the corner of my eye the other day. And so that was interesting. It's been a lot of noises and voices, not a whole lot of visual stuff yet, but
right. It'll ramp up.
Yeah. But I'm huge into the history of places, and that's why I love the folklore and urban legends, because I think it does help keep the history alive as well. And like Rotherwood Mansion, if it didn't have those crazy stories, nobody would know about it.
Exactly. That's what hold on a second. Dog bark. Okay. No. Okay. We're good. All right. That's exactly what I'm saying. As if these stories didn't exist, these places would not be as interesting, especially the historic places.
Yeah. And like I said, I'm trying to get the history together of the location that I own now. And we haven't started investigations yet because we're working on the house, but it's a task, especially for a 200-year-old house. And to get it right,
have you gone to the county clerk and done the deed research, book number and page number, and go all the way back?
I have not had time to do that yet.
Gotcha.
Yeah. That because we've been working so much on the house, but
right.
I have done ancestry. There wasn't a whole lot of history out there about the house It was owned by one family for almost 100 years.
Okay.
And so don't know who built it. Don't have any idea who built it. They can't find a deed. But deeds weren't generated. If the person already owned the land, the deed wasn't generated to build the house. It was only generated when they sold it.
Right.
But yeah, the original deed has never been found. So,
or the library or courthouse got burned down during the Civil War, and they've lost all of it. Yes.
yeah.
I've encountered that a few times.
Yeah, but there's so much history with this family, and even the second family that lived there, bought it in the late 1940s and lived there in 2014. Was a prominent family in the community, and it's interesting because 180 of its 200-year history, it was lawyers that lived there.
Okay.
It's interesting that when the Knight family died off, basically, another family of lawyers bought it.
Yeah.
So it's pretty interesting, but it has a really fascinating history. But that's a different show.
Okay.
So,
it's all right.
Yeah. But so there's lots of occult stuff that goes on in Appalachia too. It's kind of with the Hellier stuff and all that. It's confusing to me because there's so many different pinpoints all over the place.
Right.
With the occult connections with the old world gods and government officials, and so how does all of that? Because I know you kind of dive into all of that stuff too. How does all that kind of play together?
That would be just high strangeness in general. Everything that Jacques Vallée discussed in his books, that is high strangeness. Anything and everything that can seem completely absurd just kind of meshes together.
And what is the deal with like the old world god worship?
So that's newer to me. And I've heard the Lord of the Dead is actually the personification of coal itself. Just very interesting take on that, because many people would, I mean, that is kind of very underworld. People would die of black lung. Mother Appalachia is a newer one I've heard as well. It's this new movement. It's kind of embracing the Appalachian culture. Sometimes I think it's romanticizing poverty that we used to have pretty bad issue in this area.
Yeah.
But it's still appreciative that people are kind of making new ways.
Yeah, and you have Pan is a big part of that as well.
Oh yes, Pan.
Well, I find it interesting because I'm agnostic, so I don't subscribe to any religion, and you're pagan, right?
Oh, spiritualist and occultist, but pagan's easier, yeah.
But I just find it's funny because a lot of the things that I found about the old world god worship has been through the guise of Christianity, and them trying to kind of shut it down and saying that it's evil and all this other stuff, to where they want to say they're sacrificing children and
that old hat. Yeah, that one's been around forever.
Yeah. But I find all that interesting, and like I said, with the Hellier stuff, it's weird, just weird going-ons and high strangeness, as they call it, and looking into things like that makes me think that it's all connected in some way, shape, or form. All the weird shit in the world is just connected in some way.
It is. I think that high strangeness is designed to make you just question your belief system. And to what reason, I still have yet to figure out, but it's like it wants you to question it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It wants to confuse you.
Yeah, I found that in investigating ghost as well, the ghost phenomenon, because anytime you get on the subject of death and asking them what happens, or they shut it down. Yes,
or they straight lie. They will straight out lie to you. That's coming from someone who sat in on weekly seances for 4 years. They will straight lie to you.
Yeah, you could be having the best, and I've had this happen, having the best EVP like back and forth on EVPs and actually hearing them answer questions on voice recorder. And then as soon as you say anything about death, how'd you die, anything like that, what happens after we die?
Yep.
the rest of the night they won't talk to you.
Yep.
It's like this weird rules that we don't understand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then I've heard other stories like when loved ones come back in weird ways, like telephone calls from the dead.
Or text messages from the dead, or messages, direct messages from the dead. Those are kind of the newer forms of that. But yes, that still occurs to this day.
But a lot of times they'll say, I don't have much time.
And they'll seem kind of staticky and distant. Yeah, I don't have much time to tell you this. And they'll give one good message and then never again.
Yeah. And I've heard other very credible stories of people spending 10, 20 minutes with the ghost of a dead loved one, like they were still alive.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems to be the rules are just all over the place.
Yeah.
Where some people find a loophole.
Yes. Some people do find a loophole on that side and this side. Seances, good loophole. Probably not popular anymore. They have a very bad reputation, undue reputation. But yeah.
Last year I wasn't big. I didn't believe a lot in a lot of the spiritualist stuff.
Definitely understand you. A lot of people faked it.
Yeah. But I actually set in on a table tipping.
Mm-hmm.
Last year in Gettysburg, and with really good friends of mine. And I've always been an empath, and more so with living people. It kind of scared me to put that energy into dead people,
right,
for a long, long time until the past 10 years. But I sat down, and they're like, my friend Cisco was like, I know you're a really strong empath. I want you to sit in on this and just, open yourself up. And she's like, I know you're skeptical because that's just your nature. And I said, okay. And they actually kind of changed my mind. I actually felt a lot of the energy. And I think the thing that blew my mind the most, there was a medium who was sitting there too with her hand on the table.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a negative energy that we all felt kind of come in. And she said, hold on a minute, I'll take care of it. And she closed her eyes and put her head back, and she swirled her hand around the table and then pulled up on it, the energy, and threw it out. And you could feel with your hands on the table, you could feel that.
Yeah.
And I was like, that kind of just like kicked me in the ass for me to kind of, well, maybe this really is going on.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I believe necessarily that's the table itself. I think the table may just a conduit for all the people sitting around it.
Yes, that's what I think.
Yeah, all of these people who are sensitive or whatever, putting their kind of energy and putting themselves out there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, all this stuff is fascinating, and you have so much in your books of things that we could talk about for the next 3 hours. Just things that people have never heard of, as far as all the different legends and folklore, and like we said in the beginning, who cares if they're true? They make some great stories.
Exactly.
And some of the stories are first-hand accounts, and there's no reason for these people to make them up. They're not gaining anything.
True. I especially like it when they're not going to be on a conference. They're not going to be in a circuit. They're not selling a book.
Right.
Those are the more credible witnesses to me, even if it's outlandish.
Yeah. And especially some of the stories that come from like 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s.
Oh, yes. There was a social stigma attached then. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, and those people definitely didn't have anything to gain. There wasn't a business like there is now with the paranormal.
Right. There was a lot of UFOs reports from a few years after Roswell where there would be, quote, citations from people, witnesses, but none would give their name. So, yeah, there was a lot of social stigma attached. Now, to that one, still is.
How much does the UFO phenomenon go out in Appalachia? It's not kind of a part of the country you really hear a lot with the UFO, UAP stuff.
It is not, but it is quite prevalent. Brown Mountain Lights, the Brown Mountain. We had, well, that's 2 hours from me because it's through the mountains, but we had a gentleman who had contact with who he described as a gaseous being from Venus that lived inside of the mountain. And then he came in contact with very voluptuous, attractive Venusian women that came from the planet Peewhammy. Don't know where he came up with it.
Yeah.
He also, I've been trying to get a hold of his book, but it's impossible to get without spending a fortune. He also had what he said was a mummified alien from what I can tell, it was probably a mummified monkey,
Yeah.
but I need the book to go further into that one.
Yeah. Yeah. So, like I said, you haven't been busy for a month. You haven't put a book out in a month.
I know.
So, what do you have planned coming up for the rest of the year?
I have no idea. I'm sure something will catch my attention. I'll go, what? I need to look into this.
Yeah.
I was thinking about doing a more interesting occult connection to the Dog Man. There's a lot of occult creating a thought form, and the people who are participating in said ritual the men would put on dog masks. It was to increase their virility, their stamina, charisma, and failure to finish this ritual by themselves would create this dog-like thought form. And this goes all the way back to Aleister Crowley. So I was thinking about maybe I should do videos of these things that a little touchy, not too many. It's a niche kind of interest.
Yeah. But that sounds interesting, though. I mean, with Aleister Crowley, the shit he had his hands in was just crazy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, some of the stories that have come out about him and his connections, and it's just interesting. Definitely interesting person.
He was quite the chaotic character.
Yeah. And so everybody can find your books on Amazon.
They can. Just search my name, Justin H. Guess, and they'll all pop up.
And you have the Southern Appalachian Folklore series, which right now you have 3 books in.
Yes.
And then you have Appalachian Cryptids and Monsters.
Yeah.
And various other books.
But those other books, yes.
Kind of the newest ones. Well, I mean, I could sit here and read all of them, but you have like a whole page, scroll down through. So.
I like my research, and then I'm like, well, maybe someone else will like this.
Yeah. No, it's great. I love how you wrote the books, kind of in it's almost like a reference book for all these different stories and things. And it's I like that because it's for me as an investigator, if I'm looking for specific type stories, it makes it very easy that I can go to one of your books and say, okay, here you have your bibliography, so there's more research on it and things like that too. So
yes, it's often joked that my bibliographies are a little too large, but I'm like, people might need to know.
Right, and where you got the information from? Yeah, it's always good.
Yeah,
yeah, because people like me like to dive down those rabbit holes. So
exactly,
when I'm stuck on a topic. So. And we just kind of jumped around here today from a few of his different books. So y'all go check out Justin H. Guess's books on Amazon. And thanks for coming on today and chatting, Justin. I enjoyed it.
All right. Thank you. I hope you have a good evening.
All right, everybody. Y'all stay safe out there. We'll see you next time. Have a good day. Thank you for listening to The Unseen Paranormal. Join me next Wednesday with a brand new guest. And please rate, review, share, and subscribe on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you're listening right now. This helps more people discover the show. You can connect with me over on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or join us in the Unseen Paranormal Lounge group on Facebook. Until next time, remember, some of the scariest things are unseen. You have come to the end of the line.